Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Roy's Tie-Dye Sci-Fi Corner, episode number 168, Star Trek, the classic 1967 episode of Tomorrow is Yesterday, as we celebrate Time Travel Month on Roy's Tie-Dye Sci-Fi Corner. With me tonight to discuss this classic episode from Star Trek is my friend and my co-host, the one and only Mr. Ross Amico. Ross, welcome.
Thanks, Roy. Thanks for having me.
How you doing, Ross?
Doing well, actually. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Good.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Sunday night. It's was a rough week, with some, illness and stuff and, just some hiccups, but got past it and doing good. How was your week?
It was fine. I mean, I don't want to waste too much time with the pleasantries. I mean, I too had a few, crazy health things earlier in the week, but I'm tip top now. So let's go.
All right, let's do it. Let's go. Yeah.
Nobody wants to hear about my health. You want to hear about Star Trek.
Well, I see we have folks out there, and I think Randy is joining us. It's coming up as Facebook user again, but Randy, I hope that's you, and you're showing as number one. Welcome, Randy. I see Jeff Rubel's joining us from out west. Jeff, welcome to the show. Colin is joining us. He's saying hi, and anyone for a jelly baby. Oh, hang on, wrong show. No, that's next week.
Next week.
Right. Yes.
Although Randy was watching Doberman Gang this afternoon. Supposedly.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I saw that. He tagged us on that. We've had influence, Ross. We've had influence.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of influence, but we've had influence. Hey, and I see Michelle Diato is joining us from New York. Welcome, Michelle. Good to see you out there. And Bill is joining us. Bill Scarrato, he's joining us from YouTube. Welcome, Bill. Thanks for being out there. Hope you're doing well tonight. Hoping you had a good weekend as well as everyone else. And I see Sue is joining us. Sue is joining us from Massachusetts, and she's excited about the discussion for tonight's episode. And I also see that we have Martin is joining us from New York State. Welcome, Martin. Good as always to see you out there. And hey, Mary Beth is out there. She's joining us from Massachusetts. Welcome, Mary Beth. Welcome to the show. And Christian is also out there saying, hey, Roy, hey, Ross, nothing better on a Sunday night than to be here on a Star Trek episode.
Thanks, Christian.
We appreciate that, Christian. And it is Randy. He's still, I was right about that. Randy, I don't know what's going on with your stuff, but at least we know you're out there. No, thanks, Sue. Yeah, we're fine.
You're fine.
We're moving ahead. And I see URKO 2005 is out there. I'm not sure if that's Matt or if that's The Hague. I'm not sure. Please identify.
It's not Matt. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it might be John. Martin is saying, listening to the Star Trek episode on audio tape that I taped many years ago as we talk about it. Oh, very cool, Martin. Very, very cool. And let's see. Mary Borello is out there. Mary, welcome. Thanks for joining us tonight. Hope you're doing well also. And also Jack Dealey's out there as well.
Yeah, I hope my head is healed. Fortunately, it's my least vulnerable spot. Yeah.
Shari is joining us. Hi, hon. She's joining us from downstairs.
From the boiler room.
With Marble and Squeaker.
Yeah. And those little yam people.
No, that was the show from like about 8 weeks ago.
I live in the past.
Hey, and Sean Tabor is joining us. Sean, welcome to the show. Sean, good to see you out there. Mm-hmm. And Sean actually was messaging during the week, and he actually has a costume, an original costume from this episode, which is very, very cool. Mm. So from this, we'll talk about that a little later. Greg Player is out there. He's saying, hi, folks. Great episode. One of my favorites. Welcome, Greg. Thanks for being out there as well, too. Good to see you. And I just want to make sure we accounted for everybody. And Randy's saying, I'm just happy that I am not the only one that would hold a Panasonic cassette recorder to the TV, record Star Trek in Space 1999. Yeah, real quick on that, Randy. No, you're not. And, it's funny that you're saying that because I actually have a tape that actually has 2 episodes of classic Star Trek. It's the teasers that I taped back in 76. And it's got Charlie, I believe it's Charlie X is on there. And then I also have the teaser from the Alternative Factor. And then right after that, I taped the Metamorph from Space 1999. So I know it was in September of 76, and I still have that tape, and it's still going strong. So it's 46 years old. So anyway, just thought I'd share that with everybody. But yeah, very, very cool. Hey, Ross, before we get started, did you used to tape record?
Oh, absolutely. I used to tape record. I remember when they reissued Star Wars within the year. I recorded all the reissue commercials that they had for that. And we used to do radio plays. I used to write radio plays and do them with my friends, record them with my friends. But yeah, periodically I would record things, movies off the television set, because we didn't have VHS at that point.
Right, yeah. Exactly. I mean, well, I'm not even going to say it, but back in the day, I remember having received the Star Wars record, the original story to Star Wars. It was a birthday present. I think it was back in 78 we got that. Mm-hmm. And a lot of edits. So, of course, it would be more convenient to have a recording that was from the theater, so you could fill in the rest, but I'm not going to say it.
Oh, yeah. And the other thing I used to record were the Monty Python broadcasts off PBS to get the sketches. Matt and I would always do the sketches. And sometimes they would get pretty involved. They had one name that would take, like 5 minutes to say. That was the sketch. So I'd memorize the name. That began, Johann Gamble Pudding, Devon Alsford, Schmiddelschmidt, Chris Kringbaum, Fry Dingle Dangle Dungle Dungle Fistine, Von Nacker Thrasher, Dungle Fistine. Yeah, it just went on and on and on. But, we would memorize these things.
I dare you to say that backwards.
But you know what? I didn't repeat it before I went on the show, so I may have left out some syllables, and I don't know if I could get to the end at this point. But it's old tapes, literally. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always cool to hear that folks did that. I remember being at a Star Trek convention, so I'm getting there, folks, with Star Trek. But I remember going to one of the early Star Trek conventions, and it was a creation event. It was at the Penta Hotel in New York, and I'm walking, and as I'm walking and going through the vendor area, one of the vendors actually is playing sound effects from, I think it wasn't a Star Trek episode. It was actually a Lost in Space episode. And my head just did this like quick turn because I immediately picked up the sound effects, and it was coming. I think it was from the episode The Derelict, and then the guy started talking to the other guy and was talking about it, and then how they recorded it, and I just thought, wow, this is just like so cool that there's actually people that are doing this type of thing, because pretty much I really was not aware of it, with the exception of talking to immediate friends like yourself and Joe and others, and then also whatever you would read like in the Starlog magazines or what have you. But to be around other folks who were total strangers, and to see that they were actually doing that, it was just incredibly cool.
It's just standard nerd resourcefulness.
Yeah.
What can I do to preserve this? What do I have?
Yeah, take a look. Turn around and look at your room, your basement.
Things have changed a lot in the last 40, 50 years.
Sue saying, definitely not the only one. I too held an audio cassette up to the TV to record Star Trek episodes. I'm relieved to hear that there were others that did the same as well. Yeah, you're in good company tonight, Sue. We're all a bunch of geeks here, but in a good way. So anyway, getting right to it, we are going to be discussing the classic Star Trek episode, and it is the one this is actually episode number, if you're going in production order and counting the two pilots, The Cage and Where No Man Has Gone Before. This is actually episode number 21. It is from the first season, and this specific episode was shot in November and early December of 1966. Which ironically enough is just coming up around now. So literally 56 years ago, this episode was filmed, which is just crazy when you think about it. I decided originally we were going to, just checking to make sure everybody's awake there. Originally, we were going to discuss The Day After Tomorrow, which we will do at another point. But what I decided was, I had rewatched it, and Ross hadn't watched it yet, and then I just kind of thought that
you're trying to head off the disaster.
Easy, Ross. I'm being diplomatic here. I decided that it was not evoking the time travel
Okay.
genre or topic or element as much as I thought this classic Star Trek episode
All
would. So
right.
I decided to take it into a different range.
All right. Remember,
So
I liked Far Side of the Sun, so
we
I'm
did
not
know.
like totally Jerry Anderson phobic.
No, I
It's
know. I
just that one show.
Amico. Anyway, so here we are. Vince is out there too. Vince just commented. He says, "Hey, Vince, welcome to the show." He's saying, "I have cassettes of Rodney Dangerfield comedy specials," and he's also saying hello to everybody. So welcome, Vince. And Sue was saying, "I love this episode. Great episode title as well." Yeah, think about it. Tomorrow is yesterday. That's pretty profound. I mean, that's pretty cool. Now, let me ask you a question, Ross. When do you recall seeing this episode back in the 60s or 60s? I'm sorry, in the 70s. Do you
I
remember watching?
recall seeing it in the 70s, definitely.
Okay.
In fact, it's funny whenever whenever Star Trek went back to Earth. I mean, real Earth, not alternate Earths, or parallel Earths or whatever. But whenever they went back to the present, like the 60s or whatever, it's like, I didn't want to see like fighter planes, and I didn't want to see mod 60 stuff. I wanted to see like green women and stuff, So it'd be like a slog, especially the one with what's his name, Gary Seven with the cat,
Right.
with ISIS. It's like, I don't want this one again. But watching it today, I loved it. So
awesome.
Yeah. And I'm sure you remember the very first time you saw it.
Ironically enough, I do have a recollection of watching this episode in Wallington, and this is when my parents lived in, and we lived in Bergen County, which was between 1971 and 1976. Now, Star Trek used to be on Channel 11, WPIX, and it was on at 6:00, and it was almost like a ritual. Get my homework done, coming home from school, and get all that done, and then I would watch Star Trek. The other show I would watch too after school, I think it was on at 3:00, was Lost in Space, and that was on Channel 5. I have the recollection of the ending of this episode which we'll get into, and it just kind of stuck with me. And I remember my mom saying to me about how much I liked Star Trek, and it centered it around this episode, and it's just something I do remember. And I've seen, just like everybody out there, we've seen these episodes literally 100 times over, and I'm not even exaggerating. So I can honestly say that. But that specific memory with this specific episode really stands out to me, and which is kind of cool. But with that, it's really neat how this episode starts, because it doesn't start with the crew of the Enterprise. Yeah. It doesn't even start on an alien planet. I mean, there's another episode in the first season where it actually starts where we don't see the crew, but we see people, and we know that it's, the way they're dressed, that it's taking place in a Star Trek episode. Mm-hmm. With this specific and by any chance too, I'm throwing that out there, a little trivia question. Anybody have an idea what episode I'm referring to with that episode? Just curious. But with this episode, it's modern day Earth. It starts off with the fighter plane, which is, they're doing the coverage of it, and they're just showing it in motion. And it's on the I'll say the pad. It's not the pad, but it's on the runway, and it's getting ready to go up. And what happens is then it cuts to these guys that are in a control center, and then they're talking about, the one guy's addressing the other guy about an object that just appeared on his scope, and the other guy's just kind of going through his whole thing and just being into what he's doing. And then he tells him that it just fell out of the sky. And then that's where he gets his attention. And then boom, it's like, we might have a UFO on our hands. And then right away they alert, the plane to go and everything. And then that they're going to send somebody up just to take a look at it. And what happens is the plane takes off, it goes up, as we all know, and it's all serious. And then at that very moment after it goes up, boom, we see the Enterprise, and we hear that familiar theme going with it. And it was just like, wow, how cool is that? Because we have never, ever seen the Enterprise at least up until this point, as Ross was saying, the Enterprise has been back to Earth, but this was the very first episode that actually had occurred. And all the other times we've seen the Enterprise, it's always been in space. So we're seeing it up in the sky. And it's just, it was like, wow. I mean, it's just like a wow moment. I'm totally geeking out here, but I think it was, and it was really cool as depicted in this photo, the third photo.
Yeah. The whole intro was a really, really, great curve that they threw you at the beginning. Like you say, you didn't know that you were in this necessarily. You're even in the Star Trek universe, but yeah, and then you get to see the Enterprise in the atmosphere. I have to say, my copies of these of the original series it's that tricorder set where they're in the plastic cases, so they have the original effects because I'm just that kind of guy. But I go back and watch them now after having watched the remastered ones for so long streaming, and so I got the original effects on there, and I've got the it's got all the dirt and the artifacts, and you can see the lines around everything. And I have to say, this one really, really needed the updated effects. I don't need anything to be photorealistic. It just has to be serviceable enough to tell the story, and it was serviceable. It told the story, but they were really they really needed more advanced effects to really they sold it, but to really sell it, you need. I mean, the whole, I'm going to ruin it, but everybody's seen it. The whole slingshot effect and everything, you just took their word for it, basically.
Right.
It's like, okay, we believe that this is going on here.
No, exactly.
It's like one step from a radio play. But, it was a great episode. I'm not going to trash it. I thought it was, one of the better ones.
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, this is probably, Star Trek is just like so good. The original series, I'm, as everybody knows, and the majority of the people out there too, we're all core fans of the original series. But this is probably in my top, I'll say no lower than top 20. It's probably even closer to top 15, maybe top 10 is tough because there's so many good episodes, but this is right there. And this, when you're dealing with time travel, it's so much fun too, because it allows you so much of the what if or what could be, and in regards to disturbing what is going to happen. And this all gets addressed in future Star Trek, whether it be the Next Generation or if it gets into Deep Space Nine, especially Deep Space Nine. They have the temporal police essentially, and then the future Star Trek series. So really, this is at the core of where it all starts in regards to, we can't mess up the past. And they don't even know when they come through, they find out the teaser is what grips you in. And then when you're waiting to find out how it's all going to begin. And then that's when it goes to the opening credits, and it essentially says tomorrow's yesterday and you see the Earth. Before I go on though, I see that there's some comments coming through, and I just want to definitely put them out there. Colin is saying, I never thought of it like this just then. At the time of filming, it was present day, 1967 for us to watch. Now it's the Enterprise in the past, if that makes sense. Yeah. Colin, that's a great point. And it's true, because now we are part of the future. But I think to your point too, or one of the, that ties into what you're saying, what makes this episode so great too is that we actually, and we'll get to that as well, where we actually have the opportunity to have somebody from our time period, which is from the 1960s, be aboard the Enterprise and to see it all and to be kind of wowed. And I think that in itself is cool. And I really think that Roger Perry, who's the guest star, he really sells it. I think he does a great job with his, playing John Christopher. And it really, really works very well with this specific episode, as this episode has a little bit of everything that really, it has drama, it has comedy, and it also has science fiction, and it has fantasy. I mean, there's all these components coming together, but they all work in succession, and it's very thought-provoking, I think.
Yeah. And to Colin's point, like looking at it from our perspective, it's very easy to forget that when it aired the first time, we hadn't been to the moon yet.
Right.
And yet Kirk, he says, "Oh, in the late 1960s, we, as I recall, is when the moon landing took place." And I was reading today, and it's interesting that there was a communication during the show saying that the moon landing would be on the moon flight would take place on Wednesday or whatever, and that's when we actually went to the moon, was on a Wednesday. It's like they out of 7 days they had they picked the right day. So there you go, prescient Star Trek. Yeah.
No, and it worked. In fact, Lost in Space actually took a shot at it, and they were close, because what happened was there's one Lost in Space episode which is a favorite of mine, except for some of the silliness that's in it. But I am also I love Lost in Space. I mean, we could revisit that at another time as well.
It's the Carrot Man.
But there was a third season episode called A Visit to a Hostile Planet, where they actually go back to Earth, but they're back into Earth in the 1940s. They too go through a time warp, and it's 1947, and John Robinson is trying to convince the folks, the townspeople, that they're not Voltones, aliens. And one of the things he says at the beginning when he's trying to address them is that they're from their future. And he goes, it wasn't until 1970 that man first set on the moon. And then he says that's, 50 years ago in our time, but, 50 years ahead in your time. So they just missed it, because it was 1969 that we went, and not 1970.
They just rolled the dice on that one.
Yeah. Hey, I want to point out, Sean is commenting. He says, I own the stock footage used in the episode. It was originally from the Lockheed Corporation. The F-104 Starfighter footage was for promo and was filmed in Germany. The U.S. was trying to sell F-104s to Germany. I gave one of the masters to John Eves. Very cool, Sean. Very, very cool. Thanks for sharing that information.
Yeah, that is cool. Again, it was all very, very contemporary. Watching it, like the rocket footage and everything. We look back now, we just take it for granted, but back then it was pretty hot stuff. In fact, the night after this, the day after this aired, they had the Apollo 1 fire.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that later, but yeah.
So I mean, it was really current events, the whole rocket space program.
Yeah, that was a huge part of
Mercury
the space program. Yeah, the space program and everything.
Yeah. Or Apollo program. Apollo's one.
Yeah, it was Apollo, first Apollo 1. Yeah. Sue's commenting that she really thought the opening was very, very cool. Let me see here. Colin, Henry Jackson. Henry, thanks for joining us. Good to see you out there. Henry's joining us from New York. He's saying, I also recorded Trek episodes on a tape recorder. Also had the 10 Commandments that I taped.
Oh, on audio cassette. Wow.
Whoa.
With the Elmer Bernstein score. And Heston's, cool. All those great lines with Heston. Yeah.
We were just talking about the 10 Commandments a couple of weeks ago, because when we were doing the Munsters with Mike and Mary Beth, Yvonne DiCarlo, she was in the 10 Commandments.
10 Commandments, right. Moses' wife. Yeah.
Yeah. Martin's saying in England we didn't get the teasers. We had the opening credits and then straight into the episode. Oh wow. Interesting. And let me see here. Henry's saying watched on WPX as well. Yeah. Also 82 Yankee games a year on PX. Yep. Yankees. Sue's saying I recovered the footage from Lockheed in LA. Oh.
Wow.
Sorry. Yeah.
They basically picked them out of the dumpster.
Wow. That's so cool, Sean. That is so cool. Randy's saying the chicken soup comedy scene. Yep, exactly.
And it's comedy because of the cute music.
Yep.
Let's emphasize the comedy with cute music.
And you know where that music is from? Gerald Fried from
right, exactly. Yeah.
Surely.
Yeah, there was a lot of stock music in it already.
Yeah.
Stock Star Trek music.
So when everything comes to be, though, after the teaser, so we're introduced to all that, and then it comes back, and then Kirk is doing his voiceover. And what he's doing is he's establishing what happened and how the Enterprise had encountered they were on their way to the starbase, and then they encountered a black, well, they call it a black star of gravitational force, and it required all their power in full reverse to break away, which in turn triggers the slingshot effect, which they don't realize up until that point. So this is what actually led to the episode that you were referring to later on earlier, Ross, which was Assignment Earth with Gary Seven and Isis the Cat.
Which I went back and watched today also. I said I better go back and refresh my memory on that, although it may have been detrimental because now I'm kind of mixing the two of them in the details in my mind. But I love how in that one it's like, because I said I better go back and see how they made it back to Earth that time, and it's just like they just throw out the mumbo jumbo at the beginning. Kirk says, "Yeah, we went back." They don't go into swing to the chase. Yeah. What were the words the very words that he used? It was let's see, it was Assignment Earth. Oh, light speed breakaway factor.
Right.
Yeah. Of course, we went back to Earth using the light speed breakaway factor. Oh yeah, that. We got it all ironed out since that last time we were at Earth. So,
yeah, they're in 1968 with that.
yeah, they really didn't go to great pains to dramatize that part of it. They said, let's just get him back to Earth so we can do this whole other thing with.
We'll actually have to do a follow up for that episode, Ross, because that episode was going to be for a pilot that Gene Roddenberry was doing,
which I didn't realize. Again, when I was a kid, I wasn't thinking about this stuff, but I was watching it today, and I thought, God, it's peculiar that they paid so much attention. They don't usually do that with a supporting character where none of the principals are there. But they have whole scenes focusing on the guest, and then I read it was a pilot. And it made perfect sense too because they had all this ridiculous business with Terry Garr and everything. So what's going on here? Oh, I see. They're trying to pitch a new show, a wacky show with Terry Garr.
It's a shame that didn't happen. That would have been kind of cool.
Yeah, but, I don't know.
Anyway, but so one thing I don't know if you noticed, and maybe some of the folks out there did. What's interesting though is when they actually recover on the bridge, one of the things they have set up differently is usually the camera is going from left to right. This time it's kind of going from right to left, and it's positioned in a different setup. It's not a very common setup. So it was kind of neat to get a kind of a different perspective of the bridge. This is something that generally didn't happen very often, just because with everything, the way they had the studio set up and with the cameras and having everything. So it was just something I'm throwing out there. But anyway, they feel like Kirk is trying to figure out what actually happened. And, he's having, damage control reports being done and everything. And then Spock lets him know that they're in Earth orbit. Scotty overrode the main the bridge setting just so that they can keep them in orbit. And with all that said, they find out then that this plane is actually coming after them and is pretty much on the attack. And they're trying to pull out of there, but it's happening very, very slowly.
You're sneaking in the plot. That's what you're doing. Don't think I don't notice.
And then what's happening is the pilot is on his way to try to find it, and he said that he's closing, and then you see the F-104 going up, and it's just so cool because when it gets to that certain point, the ground control tells them that he should have visual contact, and when he does it, they're playing the music from the Corbomite maneuver, and it's just really cool because then you actually get to see the Enterprise, and I've got it on the third picture, and it's just like hovering up and it's heading up to the clouds. And then the guy, and he even says, he goes, whatever this thing is, it's huge. And then he says, what is it? 2 cylinder code projections on top and 1 below, purpose undetermined. And it's just like, wow, this is just like mind blowing. And then you're hoping that the Enterprise is going to get away. But then part of you is almost like wondering what happens if it doesn't, what's going to happen? We've never seen the Enterprise land. I mean, it's been said that the Enterprise can't land. So how would this all go down? And it's pretty intense. Phil's commenting saying, makes you wonder if Star Trek a series of shows and movies about space travel or time travel.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And then he also says, almost never any weather when we visit Star Trek Earth. It's always a sunny day on Star Trek Earth. And Jeff Rubel's asking if I'm using the remastered effects. No, Jeff, I purposely did not use the remastered effects. Now, to be fair, to Ross's comment, I think the remastered effects for this episode are incredible. I think they did a beautiful job with them, and I totally love them. But for the purposes of the show, I wanted to kind of preserve just the original, and that's why I went with that. Henry saying Christian about tapes of memory serves, and my dad talking in the background about the biblical accuracy of it all.
Yeah, yeah. See, there you would be like when you were actually doing it. It's like, Dad, shut up, Dad, shut up. But now you're happy to have the tapes. You know, it's like, oh yeah, this is a little preservation of family history here, and I can hear my dad's voice. You know,
I used to twitch because I'd be like, that same thing with my parents. I'd be like, please don't talk during the show. You know, please, just talk really low. And then my mom would say to my dad, he's recording.
And you can hear it on the tape. Yeah.
Oh yeah, good stuff. Yeah, I'm a purist. Sue's commenting, saying, Christian, that's amazing. Glad someone found that footage and released it in the remastered version. Hey, and Lou is joining us from Rhode Island. Lou, welcome. He said, I'm here. Couldn't bring you in on Facebook. No worries, Lou. Thanks for joining us on YouTube. As a reminder to everybody, we are now broadcasting not only on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter at this moment. Martin is saying, well, Kirk did break the time rules several times according to DS9 episode Trials and Tribulations. Another awesome episode of a Star Trek series. Love that episode. So anyway, I'm not going to go plot to plot because we all know the plot here. But in regards to that, though, it was really cool. And then what happens is Spock warns Kirk that if they try to use the tracking or whatchamacallit, the not the deflector, if the tractor beam to try to hold the ship in its position because they're worried about being attacked and they're trying to get away, that the ship might not be able to take it. But what does Kirk do? He says to Scotty just to lock onto it anyway. And then what happens is the ship starts breaking up. So what they do is they beam up aboard the pilot. And think about it, though. Think in terms of this. I mean, especially when you think about UFO sightings and everything, and this kind of like ties into that. You're in an aircraft, an American aircraft, or in a planet, from the planet Earth. You're in a serviceable aircraft 1 minute, and then the next thing you know, you're standing up. You're not even sitting down. You're standing up, and you're in a place where you don't even know where it is. And I thought it was kind of cool too that what they did was they didn't have him facing the direction of the audience when he beamed up. He's like facing the transporter chamber, so he actually gets the opportunity to turn around and see where he's at. And I thought that was a good moment.
I thought realistically you might be sitting down or in that, kind of position and then fall back or something. But yeah, I mean, it worked as a,
plot device.
a plot device, a dramatic device to have him standing with his back to everyone. Yeah.
But Kirk tries to put him at ease and everything, but then he starts to get the tour of the ship, and then of course he gets to see a female lieutenant that's walking through, and then Kirk points out that that's a crewman because he's surprised because again this is 1960s Earth, and in regards to what they're used to.
Yeah, because they're so progressive in the 23rd century with the women walking around the short skirts on the Enterprise. That's how progressive we are. We don't even notice. Make them as short as you want.
And I thought that was a great scene though, where when he comes onto the bridge and he goes that he never believed in little green men, and then Spock greets him and he's like, neither have I. It's just it was just a nice moment. Also, one of the things that we get to learn in this episode is that when Christopher is talking to Kirk about the ship, he makes the comment that it must have taken something to build a ship like this. And then Kirk says there's only 12 like it in the fleet. So that was kind of cool because it kind of gives us some insight, because really the only other episode up until this point that we are introduced to Starfleet Command and what it actually is would have been Court Martial. And that was an episode that was filmed maybe about 6 episodes prior to this one. Now, these episodes were not run in production order. So one thing I don't know is I don't have I don't have it memorized as far as what the airing dates. I mean, that's something I definitely would have to look up, and I probably should have looked it up
Oh, my
beforehand.
goodness. Yeah.
But what I can tell you is Court Martial was episode 15, and this one is episode 21. So there you go.
Very good.
But anyway, it's at this point, though, that while Christopher is seeing the bridge, and Kirk seems pretty kind of smitten with himself as far as, showing him around, and, he seems like a nice guy, but Spock is the one to really, drop the hammer and says that he's concerned about all of this because, and he even says, I'm not referring to Captain Christopher, but he said if somebody else should gain knowledge of the future, they could potentially manipulate stocks, nations, and maybe change what is to be. And essentially, it's almost a prelude of what actually happens in City on the Edge of Forever, if you think about it. It's not
right.
because of McCoy doing something bad, like bad deed. He's doing a good deed, but it's just changing whatever is going to happen.
Right. Which we get in all the Star Trek things then. Yeah. Whenever there's time travel involved.
Right. You know what it really reminded me of immediately was Back to the Future.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was going to say, having just done Back to the Future, right?
Yeah.
Or Back to the Future 2, is that what you said?
Yeah, Back to the Future 2, the second movie, deals with Biff.
When you get to see what the future's become, yeah.
Right.
It's like Old Man Potter took over the future. Yeah. And It's a Wonderful Life. But, yeah. And I was thinking about also, still back to Colin's remark about looking back with our contemporary eyes to 1960s when all this stuff was brand new. I mean, obviously the technology, has leapt so much in the last 55 years or what have you since the show. So the computers are still these large, machines, and they've got the tape. They have to go and steal the tape and everything. And I love Sulu's line about how, if I've seen, one of these in a museum. Oh, I have too. And as I recall, if we turn it on, it'll make the devil's own noise or something. I'm going to use that all the time now. The devil's own noise.
It's a great line.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to welcome Jenny. Jenny's out there. She's saying, sorry, I'm late, but it is tomorrow here. Yeah, because Jenny is in Australia. Welcome, Jenny. Hope you're doing well.
Tomorrow's yesterday.
Tomorrow is yesterday. Exactly. Welcome, Jenny. Hope you're good. Thanks for joining us, too. Captain Phyllis saying the length of the skirts and the go-go boots should be addressed in an episode called The Roddenberry Factor. Oh, boy. He's taking over from Matt. Sue is saying you would think that people would have a better perspective that film should be saved. One person of Sue's talking about commenting about what Sean was talking about in regards to the footage. Yeah, no, very true, Sue. And it's so cool that Sean has got that footage as well. Sean is also commenting. He's saying the USAF uniforms were used in the 1963 Rock Hudson movie, A Gathering of Eagles. This was a movie about Strategic Air Command. In the episode, they show Air Defense Command, NORAD, but the uniforms are SAC. Very, very cool. And let me see. Phil's saying, and Kirk didn't have the Air Force pilot give back to the sports almanac from the ship's library.
Now, I know somebody commented they had one of the uniforms from the show. One of the costumes.
And actually,
he did too. Also, okay.
You know what? I'm going to actually, Sean, thank you for sharing that. And
because Roger Perry apparently wanted to keep one of his jerseys, I guess, that he had used on the show. He was going to smuggle it off the show, but then he thought better of it.
And then he regretted that he didn't.
Yeah, I guess he asked DeForest Kelly. He says, would anybody mind if I took the? He said, "Oh." DeForest said, "Oh, they kind of frown on that kind of thing around here, but if you just stuck it in your bag, I don't think anybody will say anything." And he didn't do it. And then later, Star Trek became such a, phenomenon. He was sorry he didn't hang on to his whatever he was going to steal from the set, his costume. So that's why I was curious about which exactly which costume whoever commented has, if it was the Enterprise costume or if it was one of the military costumes or.
No, it was actually the military. And
uniform.
actually, I'm going to bring that on right now. Bear with me 1 second here. And again, that was Sean that
Okay.
that did that. And let me see if I can do this. This is not working the way I want it to. Actually, hold on one moment. Trying to navigate the and it's not cooperating. No, and it's interesting too because what you were saying about Roger Perry, Ross, he actually, like you said, he really very much liked the uniform. He thought it was pretty cool, and he
So
could
do we
only
know which one he tried to take? Was it one of the, was it like the flight suit, or was it?
no, it was his Star Trek uniform.
It was the Star Trek uniform. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. I found it interesting. He actually served in the Air Force Intelligence in the early 50s.
before he went into acting.
Yeah, yeah. And I thought he did a good job on this. I thought, and then going and watching the other one, Assignment Earth, I thought that what's his name, Land, the guy who played Gary,
Oh, Robert Lansing.
Robert Lansing. I thought he did a good. It's like everybody had such great voices back then. Then you find out it's because they just smoke like chimneys. It's like, you look at their bios and it's like, oh, well, lung cancer at 66. It's like, all right, well, no wonder he had a great voice.
No, it's sad too because Robert Lansing actually had passed away at a very young
Yeah,
age.
yeah. But they really had good speaking voices back then. I envy them. Yeah. That, and then Roger Perry. As far as the movies went, he went on to do some, really crazy films. I mean, you take what you're offered, what you can get, but it's like, wow. I don't know if somebody commented, I think, on your Facebook page that he was in the thing with two heads. Remember that
Oh,
with
was he really?
Ray Milland and Rosie Greer?
You
Yeah,
know what's yes, that's right. He was
which
in
we
that.
which we should do one of these.
We
One
really
of
should
these
do that.
times.
No,
And
and
yeah,
go ahead.
and he's in the Count Yorga films. Do you remember those?
I do remember those. Yes,
And Roller Boogie with Linda Blair.
yes.
Wow, what a
that's
filmography! Yeah,
that's bringing back a lot of memories in regards
which
to.
I have to confess in front of everyone. I actually saw that in the theater.
Did you really, Ross?
Yeah, I saw everything in the theater back then. I didn't select the movie, but I saw it.
Okay,
Roller Boogie. Yeah.
there it is. Sean, thank you for.
Wow. Okay.
Although I did, whatchamacallit? TA. Hang on. Oh, hang on 1 second.
Terrific.
Can you still see it?
No,
All
I
right.
see the bubble tea or whatever that is that you've got up there. The
No, that's what you're saying. Okay, hold on.
the big blue. Oh, there we go.
There we
Right.
go. Yeah, but that was his. Yeah, that was his uniform. Very very cool.
Hmm.
Again, Sean, thanks for doing showing that and sending that photo. Martin is saying the thing with two heads sounds like a good one to review for
That'll
Christmas.
be our Christmas. That'll be our Christmas movie this year. Just to ensure Roy is hostile. I'm afraid to even suggest this year.
Thanks, Phil. No, and thanks again, Sean. Much appreciated. Very, very cool. Yeah, we'll unveil our Christmas shows later on, and it won't be the man with two heads or two brains. It's funny. Shari's dad was watching the man with the X-ray eyes. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, another
Ray
Raymond
Milland.
Land. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he did. Another one that had a great filmography at the end of his career. He went and did all these classics, and then he turned around and did, Thing with Two Heads and Frogs.
Frogs.
X Man with the X-ray eyes.
Now Sean is commenting. He's saying, Roy, if you get the costume up, you will notice the ribbons on the uniform as put there by the production. They are gibberish and out of order. This was a standard procedure as Hollywood was under the myth you couldn't use the ribbons in order. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Very cool. All right. Is it still sharing, Ross?
What, the uniform?
Yeah.
No, you don't have it up.
Okay, just checking. Um,
Did you want to put it up?
no, I was trying to
What are
show.
you asking me?
No. Sue saying, Roy, you were curious about the comparison of the production number of Tomorrow's Yesterday to Assignment Earth. Assignment Earth was the 56th of 80 to be produced in 50. No, I did realize that. So I was talking about in regards to Court Martial to Tomorrow's Yesterday. I believe it or not, I did know Assignment Earth was the last one, and Assignment Earth was the very last episode they showed for the second season too, which was cool. Yeah, great info, Sean. Thanks again. Now, getting back to Roger Perry, he actually did. He had 2 television series. One was in the, I think it was in 1960, and another one was in 1963. And what I remember of him, especially in the 70s and maybe even the early 80s, he always seemed to be the heavy in these shows. He never was like the good guy anymore. He was always the one, causing the trouble. Kind of like Gary Lockwood. Gary Lockwood would always wind up being like the heavy in the 70s or even in the 80s when you'd see him on TV. But I always thought of him though from the Star Trek episode. And I think for some time he was married to Joanne Worley.
Oh, really?
And, yeah. If I
Okay.
remember correctly, but I think they did get divorced. But yeah, and sadly he passed away about 4 years ago. So, but yeah, definitely was really, really cool. But yeah, in regards to some of the things we were talking about, the comedic bits of this episode, one of the things that really started out right from the beginning too is when they actually bring Christopher. Captain Christopher to Kirk's quarters, and Kirk is doing his captain's log. He's actually having an issue with the computer, and it was like a bit that they had actually stuck in, and it kind of like humanized the moment where now Majel Barrett, who did Nurse Christine Chapel at the time, and who also became Mrs. Gene Roddenberry, so to speak, was actually the voice of the computer, as we all know. And she actually gave it a playfulness and was almost like flirting with Kirk while she's, responding back to him.
Like a sultry computer.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just it was a fun moment. And then Spock is the one who's actually letting Kirk know that, that the computer's out is going to needs to be repaired. But if they're going to have it repaired, it's going to take like at least 3 weeks. I think they said at a star base.
Yeah, they just have to send it into the Geek Squad.
But then it comes out that it's the designers of the computer are from a planet that's dominated by women, and it was just a funny moment though, the way they went about that. And Kirk is and then Captain Christopher is just like all amused about the whole situation and saying that he would love to hang out and see what Kirk's going to do to get his girlfriend taken care of. But this is when Kirk drops the bomb that they can't send them back, and that they're worried about history being tampered with and then essentially them being destroyed. Now, the other point that comes through at this time, though, is when Kirk is he hears from Scotty about a progress report. Everything is back to normal as far as the engines and everything, but they have nowhere to go. So he actually gets his dig into him, and he goes, he says, "Too bad for you, Captain." He goes, "You're pretty much a prisoner of time, just like I am." And if you think about it, too, I mean, think it's almost like you've been hijacked from your job, what you were doing, and then you're transported onto the ship. You want to go back, and then you're told you can't, and it's being told that you're never going to be able to see your family again, and you're never going to see Earth again that you know of it. I mean, it's pretty serious.
But then they trump that and say, "Oh, by the way, we can't go home either."
Right.
So this is a really good story. It's a great little Star Trek time travel tale, and very, very, very well written. It keeps you thinking the whole time, keeps you guessing the whole time.
Yeah.
But then they violate all kinds of rules. Contradict. There are all kinds of paradoxes that come up with the solution and everything that we can talk about in a bit. But whenever you do one of these time travel things, it's kind of they run into that with Back to the Future Part 2, where Marty McFly's kind of watching the action of Part 1. I haven't seen the movie for years, but I remember they kind of have the action taking place around the action of the first movie for a significant portion of it. And in the Doctor Who, there's a Doctor Who movie, The Five Doctors, or a little mini series or something. I remember watching where they said, "Oh, you have to be really careful that the Doctor doesn't see himself, or the universe will come to an end, or something." So they can have the Doctors traveling through time and seeing themselves or something. But yeah, so in this one, it's the same kind of thing. It's, well, what happens if they get to the point. I mean, I'm jumping ahead. Everybody's seen the episode, right?
Right.
I mean, you're all Star Trek people, otherwise you wouldn't be here. But they go through that whole thing where they're going to slingshot, and they're going to send Captain Christopher back. And they have to have perfect timing in order to beam him into himself at the right time. They're hitting all these marks. You got the other guy, the security guy that finds him in the computer room. They got to send him back too. But so they went back in time and they did all this. Why did they have to go down in the first place to steal the computer tapes then?
Right.
It's like, that whole middle part of the.
But you know what though? You're totally bringing up a good point.
But yeah, good.
I was going to say though, however, it's almost like they didn't deduce this until later though.
Right.
Yeah. At the point that they're at, where they're not going to let Christopher go back.
Yeah.
And what's really, and this is the other thing too, Christopher tries to say, well, you got to send me back, because he goes, if you don't send me back, it's going to interfere with history. And then Kirk looks at Spock, and then Spock shakes his head, and he says he found no relevant contributions by John Christopher. Can you imagine standing there with these two people that you don't know, saying that they're from the future? You're trying to get yourself back to be home, and your bargaining chip, what they're telling you essentially is that they can't send you back because you potentially could mess up time if you go back and you report everything. And then what you try to do is you try to say to them, well, if you don't send me back, my not going back is going to disrupt history. And then they pretty much look at you and say, guess what? You didn't contribute anything.
You don't do anything.
Can you imagine? I mean, seriously though, I mean, what a whatchamacallit moment. Like, pretty much
so much for that butterfly flapping its wings.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, again, it's really like digging deep. I mean, we've all seen these episodes and we kind of go over it. But if you go think about the writing and the what's actually being said, and you taking it to a deeper level, I mean, it's really making a statement. And with that, it just pretty much ends on the note that, again, Kirk finds out that, from Scotty, that they, the situation is they can't get out of that time. They're stuck. And then it starts over in the next, after the commercial comes back into the next act, that Spock says that he's got new information that's, crucial, and that he needs to talk to Kirk and Captain Christopher. But what happened is Christopher wants to get off the ship because he pretty much, he's not going to wait around for them to, do what they're going to do. And he tries to escape. And of course, Kirk stops him in the transporter room. And when they're in the sick bay and they're talking, and of course there's McCoy and the human element, and they're discussing about, could he maybe forget about his family, his wife, his kids and everything. And, almost about being retrained. And of course, McCoy, makes that comment, and then Kirk says that you're starting to sound like Spock. And then McCoy says, if you're going to be nasty, I'm going to leave, or whatever. And again, what happens is when Christopher comes out of it, he says he's not going to be able to do that. That's not going to happen. But then, of course, Spock relays the information that he didn't go over and beyond and check about offspring. And then we find out that he's going to have a son that isn't born yet. So the man who was never born, kind of like the Outer Limits episode.
And he was going to have an important role in a mission to Saturn, so that they had to get him back somehow. How are we going to do this? How are we going to return Captain Christopher? Yeah.
Right. And they still don't know. And at this point, they're trying to figure out how they're going to get everything back. And then that's when Kirk talks to Spock and is essentially saying, have you worked out our problem? And this is where Spock is deducing about a slingshot effect to do, to potentially go back in time. I want to welcome David. David just popped in and he just joined us. So I want to say hi to David. He's out there. Welcome, David. saying this is one of his favorite episodes. And Jack McKinley's out there too. Hey, Jack. And he's saying, according to Google, Gary Lockwood is still alive. He's like 85 years old. Yeah, he is. In fact, he was actually up at the Star Trek original series set tour about maybe 6 years ago. And he's also been at Chiller as well. And yeah, and believe it or not, Gary Lockwood was one of the younger guys. He was, I think, 28 when he did Where No Man Has Gone Before, back in 65, which is kind of crazy. Let me see here. Jeff Rubel is commenting, saying, I've always wondered how they got around the problem of Christopher's mass doubling when he beamed into himself. I know, thinking too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good point. But you know what I think? And this was my take on it. And this is where it kind of gets kind of spiritual. It's almost like his soul was being beamed into himself. It's almost how they kind of made it seem. I don't know. It's kind of metaphysical. I mean, there's so many ways you can look at it, but I don't know.
You could look at it that way.
With that one.
Yeah. But yeah, they just had, all I think is they had really good timing. And when they sent these people back.
Yeah.
And now the story, it was, the screenplay, the teleplay was by DC Fontana. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
I'm glad that somebody finally said it, and she did a terrific job with it. But the original idea for the story is from one of the associate producers of Trek. And he was Robert Justman. I guess he came up with the idea and gave an outline to Roddenberry, and he handed it off to DC Fontana, and she actually wrote the script and did a terrific job with it. But Justman never got credit for the story or any kind of compensation for it. So
yeah, no, I did read about that. Supposedly there was a memo that he'd written. I think it was in April of that year about this idea. But yeah, and from what I know, from what I read anyway, I should say, it doesn't seem like, I don't know if there was correspondence there as far as what happened, but DC Fontana definitely got the credit. And like you said, the original story outline she submitted was in October of 66. And then there was a couple of outlines there was a revised outline that was done on the 13th of October. Then there was a first draft teleplay, which was at the end of October. And then a second draft teleplay that was done in November. And then Gene Kuhn also had done a script polish on this. And then it went to be shot in December. One thing I want to do is, and I don't have actually official shout outs, one of the things I want to do is say, in regards to Mark Cushman, if you have not read his books, I definitely want to put it out there. Mark was on the show a couple of years ago, and I actually definitely want to have him back in regards to Star Trek. He did a lot of research, and he had access to Gene Roddenberry's memos, and he did the 3 seasons of classic Star Trek. He's also done the movies of Star Trek, as well as the in-between years. So definitely want to give him a shout out, because a lot of the information that I had gotten was from this book. So want to definitely put that out there to the folks. And
now, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Ross.
No, so DC Fontana, of course, was the story editor for the series. I'm not telling anybody anything they don't know. And she did a lot of the scripts, the teleplays for a number of classic episodes. But she also was in a position a number of times where she had done the work and wasn't given credit. Roddenberry would get credit for for the script or the story or what have you. But she really, came through all the time. For somebody who was not a science fiction person to start out with, she really blossomed, and she wrote the best of the Star Trek animated episodes.
She was an associate producer on that. Yeah, it's sadly she passed away 3 years ago, and you talk about a loss. I mean, it was because of her. I mean, the episodes that she developed. Journey to Babel is another one that she had written during the second season of classic Star Trek, which was around the Vulcan family.
And she wrote Yesteryear is the one I was talking about for the animated series, which was the one everybody remembers. And she continued to be associated with Star Trek, but I never really followed beyond the original series.
Right.
But I understand she was with them for a long time.
Yeah. A lot of history. And interesting enough, Ross, she was from New Jersey.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Where's
Totowa. Believe it or not, down if you go up Route 80 from here, it's probably only like about an hour and 15
Oh,
minutes away. Yeah.
all right.
So yeah, just but she loved writing, and from what I read about her and everything, and just what amazing career in what she did, and she worked with Samuel Pebbles or Peoples,
People.
who was a science fiction writer and also wrote Where No Man Has Gone Before. And yeah, I mean, it's just really, really a lot of history there. And she was, if you think about it, she was only maybe 27, 28 years old when she was working on classic Star Trek too.
Yeah.
So she
Yeah.
really, I mean, made a huge impression, and just such an important integral part of the series. She actually had left somewhere, I think, within the second season of classic Star Trek too.
Yeah.
But Sue is commenting about meeting Gary Lockwood. We met Gary Lockwood. He's a cool guy, really amazing to spend some time with him. Gary and Keir DeLay wrote a personal inscription in a 2001 book that I gave to John as a surprise birthday present. Oh, very cool.
Wow.
Claudia is out there. Claudia Combs. Claudia, welcome to the show. Good to see you out there. Hope you're doing well. And hold on one second. I just lost you there, Ross. Okay. But let me see here. Sean is commenting, saying DC stories were about the human element, demonstrating that you don't need all the tech babble for a good story. That's the key reason I think the original series beat the later versions. Good
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. And that's what I was kind of trying to get across when I was talking about the effects at the beginning, that, some of the effects were a little creaky, to try to convey some of the more intense moments, like the climactic slingshot effect, but you didn't really need it because it was so story driven,
Right.
and character driven. And these episodes were special back then. I agree.
And especially, I especially think the first season, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but I mean, I always thought that the first season was probably the best. I mean, there was a lot of second season episodes that I very much enjoy from classic Star Trek. And for the third season, I think there's 24 episodes in the third season, and there's probably about 8 to 10 that I favor, and then the rest of them I'm not so much. I mean, there was a lot of changes that took place that we're all aware of because of what had happened with Fred Freiberger coming on board and everything. And again, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but it's just that it definitely went into a different direction.
Should I put on my vampire makeup?
Hey, Dennis Chevalier is out there. Welcome, Dennis. Good to see you out there. He's joining us from Canada. Welcome, Dennis. Dennis, Sue saying DC Fontana was a fantastic writer. She understood the human condition. Yeah, no, totally. And speaking of which, yeah. So again, we were saying about the human element, and Henry's commenting too. He's saying, I agree with the assessment of the season of the original series. Yeah. And Jeffrey was saying the first season was the one where I felt the most like that we were really out there, much more dramatic. Yeah. It's, I don't want to make comparisons about 1999, but it's like the first season I felt they really were on the moon in Space 1999. They were really on a base, and they were really in the void. It was just like, empty, and they were really alone out there. And then in the second season, not so much. It was just more of like, and I would say that with Star Trek too. Everything, the stories, it was very story driven. And I even remember reading, I think Gene Roddenberry had said in regards to even like with the props, as much as, it would be really cool to see close-ups on the props and have those moments. I mean, where we pretty much would salivate over them. It wasn't done a lot because it would be almost like if you're watching a Western, they're not going to do like, close-ups on the guns. It was part of what was going on. It was part of the material. And that was kind of the premise that they took with, that he took with Star Trek. It was just part of the story. And the story was what was very important, not so much the special effects. The special effects and the props and all of that supported the story, but it wasn't the main item. It wasn't what was making it, happen. Jenny's saying, agree about seasons when the production helm changes. Yeah, sadly. And Martin, Space 99 had the case of the FF virus. Oh, boy. And we thank you for your service, Sean, especially on the Veterans Day weekend. Yes, thank you, Sean. Absolutely.
Mentioning the virus, this also had me thinking about bringing these two cultures together, from different centuries, which is not addressed in the episode. But I was thinking about Contagion, that they would have somebody on the ship, but they have people on all the time. We got to think the transporters they probably mentioned that somewhere in the lore where it cleans people up, and they're not going to bring a virus on the ship or something, because there was that episode where they
the Omega Glory.
Yeah, right. So here we have Captain Christopher from the 20th century and Captain Kirk from the 23rd century, and you throw them together, and they're bringing people up from Earth. You get a nasty flu.
Yeah,
from that. I would have masked. Yeah.
You would have wore a mask. Is that what you're saying?
I would have masked. Yeah, definitely.
There you go.
Yeah.
So anyway, with all that said, where do we leave off, Ross? Oh, you know what? Phil just brought up a good point. The transporter always removes germs unless the story needs it.
There you go.
Biofilters. That's right. Naked Time. And speaking of the Naked Time, originally this episode was to be like part 2 of the Naked Time because it dealt with the time travel.
Right.
That's a perfect lead in with that.
Yeah. What was it? That there was a parallel, because I thought of that too, where they kind of, let's Superman. How Superman 1 and 2 are supposed to be the same movie, but they had to kind of
separate them.
Yeah. Put a new ending on the first one in order to get it out. But I thought about that with this one too. How was this going to go right into the going back in time to Earth?
Right.
Episode, but they split them up, changed it and split it up. Yeah.
Which would have been interesting. Yeah. Now, Star Trek: The Next Generation actually did a sequel to that episode. It was called The Naked Now, as opposed to The Naked Time, and it was an early first season episode. And essentially, that, to remind everybody, that's the episode where everybody out there knows it. To remind you, Ross.
Were they naked?
No. What it is perspiration when they touched each other. If they had that disease, it was passed from person to person, and what it was like alcohol in the bloodstream. That's the episode.
So, right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I didn't see that one, but I did see the one in the original series.
Yeah, it was the same thing. Same type of transmission, but it was a different.
Don't take off your hazmat and touch anything and touch your face. That's the moral of that story.
Yeah, that's the one, Martin. He's fully functional. Data. So anyway, in regards to the Vince is saying I like the Naked Gun. wrong genre, Vince. Wrong genre. But again, to keep it light and keep the comedic elements going, what happens is they decide that Kirk is going to go down with Sulu, and they're going to try to get the record tapes, so that way they have to send Captain Christopher back. If he's going to talk, there's nothing to back up his story. It's just like he thinks he saw a UFO, just like everybody, the thousands of others people that thought they did and came up with stories. And, if he tries to give a story, and they might think he's, as he says, they'll either think he's a liar or a fool. And Spock kind of comes to his defense with that. So anyway, Kirk and Sulu go down, and they attempt to get the tapes back. They find a room that has them. And as Ross was saying earlier, then what happens is they get pretty much spotted by the guard. And that's the guard that actually, that uniform that Sean has in his possession. And he actually comes into the room and tells them to take their belts off and the bag that Sulu has all the film in. And then he starts fooling around with the communicator, because McCoy is edgy that they have not checked in. And again, it's a nice scene between McCoy and Spock. And what's happening is, again, first season, the characters are getting developed and fleshed. There's always that tension between McCoy and Spock. And Spock is trying to be rational and saying, you know what, they're trying to do this, and they're trying to be discreet. I think what he says is, doing something by stealth is a lot less, is more time consuming than the practical approach. So then McCoy tries to come back at him and says, shouldn't you be working on your time warp calculations? And Spock just looks at him and he says, I am. And then, McCoy is just like stopped dead in his tracks. So while all this is going on, the guard down on Earth gets the communicator because they try to contact them, and he hits the emergency signal and they beam him up. And again, it's a comedic moment because he's just like shell shocked because one minute he's in this room with these intruders, the next minute he's standing in a room that he doesn't know where he is. Then he's got a guy with pointed ears coming at him and just looking at him. I mean, if you think about it, they're lucky that he didn't start shooting his gun off and try to doing damage, but the story did not go in that direction. They pretty much went with the he shell shock, and he's like immobile, and he just couldn't believe where he was at. And then they go from there. And the next scene, then what happens is they go into another room, Kirk and Sulu, but this time they trip an alarm, and then Kirk decides to take on 3 guys as only Kirk can do.
Captain Kirk, his fighting style where he turns himself into a log and throws himself into the crowd. It's like a Popeye cartoon.
It was that is such, and they're playing that music too. They're playing the music from Shore Leave too. It was just a fun scene though. I mean, and he takes all 3 of them down too. I mean, it was entertaining. Oh boy. And then they wind up detaining him. Now at this point, Spock enlists the aid of Captain Christopher, because Christopher is actually the one who gave him the beam down coordinates, because he actually really wanted to help with the situation to try to find the film. But now Christopher feels like he's got the upper hand, and he says, I know exactly where they're holding him, but I'm not going to tell you where they're holding him unless you take me with you. And his plan is to go down there, but he wants to try to essentially just break away and report everything. And Kirk gets into it with the chief, and it's again, it's another comedic scene because the guy is getting really ticked off at Kirk because he says, what the hell are you wearing? And he goes, what is this? And he's holding a phaser. And then Kirk even warns him. He says, if you're not careful with that, you're going to have a big mystery, a very big one. And then he even throws it to the guard behind him. And I don't know if everybody saw it, but when he throws the phaser, Kirk like closes his eyes, because when the guy catches it, he's thinking, he's going to accidentally activate it and he's going to probably, obliterate himself. But anyway, what happens is Spock and company come to the rescue, and Spock, being Spock, is anticipating Captain Christopher not wanting to go back to the ship. And Christopher gets a gun, and he pretty much tells Kirk that he's going to report. And then, of course, Spock comes from behind him and gives him the nerve pinch. As only Spock can do. So, anyway. But what's cool, though, is they have a plan. They're going to do the slingshot effect. They're concerned that the engines aren't going to they have the speed to do it. But what Scotty's worried about is the braking, slamming on the brakes and stopping, because he's worried about them not being able to stop in time. And then also worried about shooting out of time. Because and this is where it comes into play what you were talking about, Ross. I mean, with all of this, the precision and everything in regards to returning these guys back. I mean, Spock essentially just says they're going to go backwards, before all of this happened. So now they don't have to worry about them having a memory of it, because they're going to return them right before all these incidences occurred. So this is where you have to ask yourself, they're being returned, but are they already there? How does that work? I mean,
time travel paradox. And then, like I said, the whole middle part of the story didn't even have to exist, since they're going to go back in time anyway. So it's like this time travel Shaggy dog story.
Yes.
Hey, let's go down and wreak havoc in the military base, and for no reason whatsoever. It's like, oh yeah, we got to steal all this stuff, and we got to get captured, and we've got to escape, and we didn't have to do any of that stuff.
Well, to be fair, they didn't realize it though up until that point.
Who knew?
Exactly. I mean, they didn't know about that at that point. Yeah. So now Henry just commented. He said that the actor that plays Airman interrogating Kirk played Officer Kirk in episodes of Happy Days. Yeah, and that actor was actually Ed Peck. always like a really serious guy too. And it's crazy, Ross. He was only like 47 or 48 when he actually did this episode. Henry's saying theoretically the episode never happened.
There you go. They take it back far enough.
Martin is saying it was just a weather balloon.
Yeah.
Oh boy. And Martin is saying DS9 did a time travel episode called Little Green Men, where they go to not Roswell, New Mexico. Yeah, you know what? I saw that once. That was, I forgot all about that. I haven't seen all the DS9 episodes. Martin is also saying again the interrogation scenario was used in the Voyage Home. Yeah, exactly. Yep, and it's the same type of thing. That's
the Voyage Home owed some stuff to this. Yeah, they did the slingshot effect again in the movie.
Right.
Star Trek 4.
Phil saying this discussion reminds me of the third Men in Black movie, where a lot of the action took place around Apollo 11 rocket in 1969. A shame they didn't run into Gary.
Yeah.
And Jenny's saying timey-wimey complications. But seriously though, it is a time travel paradox though. And here you go. And we were talking about Back to the Future. Think about it. Marty in that movie, he goes back 5 minutes before everything took place. But then what he does is he sees everything happen with Doc Brown. And then what happens is he jumps into the time machine and he's gone. So
right.
He's left to be there in the time because he himself had gone back to the future or back in time.
Right. It's another one of those things where you're wondering if it would really work that way or not.
Right. So
yeah.
Which goes back to what I'm saying. It's when they were beaming themselves into them, it's like, were they not there, or were they, what is it?
Right.
Maybe they weren't there, and maybe they needed to be beamed there to be there. It's kind of
right.
Well,
that's what they say, in the assignment Earth. That's basically what they say. It's like, oh, this whole thing could have been resolved and we could have avoided this. And oh no, wait a minute, maybe we had to be here for this to happen. And they check the time and it's like, oh, or the distance where the warhead explodes from Earth. It's like, no, see, exactly 1.4 miles above Earth. So we had to be here. Things worked out exactly the way they were supposed to.
Right.
Yeah. Whereas in this one, now when they start doing the slingshot thing, they could be, are they caught in a time loop? Is everybody gonna forget this adventure? Right. Are they gonna go back? But that can't be the case, because of course you've got to continue with, there's all kinds of stuff with time travel
well, and here's the thing too. Now Kirk and crew would not forget, but because they were in that moment, they were, but in regards to Captain Christopher and the guard, what about them? I would say they wouldn't
supposed to. Yeah, they're supposed to forget because they sent them back to the past. But what about the tapes that they stole, the computer tapes? Do they, since it's in with their timeline now on the Enterprise, do they have the tapes, or do the tapes go back to Earth with?
Right.
Or are there two sets of tapes now? There's two realities. They're the tapes, the computer tapes that stayed on Earth, because that's the past, and now you have future tapes that are on the Enterprise.
Well, the past
created a Kelvin timeline.
The past tapes would be recording, but the Enterprise wasn't there, because when he was expecting to see it, it was gone. So there was nothing to photograph, because the ground control even says you should be able to see it now.
You're right. So it would have disappeared by then.
Yeah. So there was nothing to record.
You blew my mind, Roy. You have me smoking so much weed.
It's okay. Sue's saying good point about the tapes, Ross, but
Roy just destroyed it. There is no point. A good philosopher.
Yeah. Is that where all this is going, Ross? Is that what all this has come to, watching all these episodes of Star Trek in 1999 and Lost in Space?
The
philosophy major.
I'm sure there were courses taught on the philosophy of Star Trek. Yeah.
Oh shoot. The Hague. You get one pass of this, John. He's saying, like Nixon, what tapes?
Exactly.
Man.
No, but you're right. You're right. They wouldn't exist.
Right.
So did they disappear from the Enterprise then?
Potentially.
Since they never existed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of like Marty's brother and sister, how they were disappearing and everything. It's kind of it's kind of the same way.
They don't disappear though; they come back.
But they came back.
Mark McClure, Jimmy Olsen. Who knew that Marty McFly's brother was Jimmy Olsen?
Yep. Crazy. Oh, here we go. Phil. He's saying, well, isn't the multiverse theory every time someone makes a decision, a new universe is created? For example, right now there is a universe where Roy and Ross decided to watch The Day After Tomorrow instead.
Yeah, and in that universe, we're trading our Brian Blessed impressions. It was a much better show in that universe. Much more entertaining. And that show took place on a Friday.
Oh man. Martin is saying, although in Back to the Future they start in the Twin Pines Mall and end up in the Lone Pines Mall. And Jeff is saying, if we go by the MUC version of time travel, nothing changed at the end. They just created a whole new universe where it happened differently. Ouch.
Spoiler alert.
Oh shoot.
I never made it through those movies.
And in that universe, Roy is evil.
Oh, yeah. Roy is evil in every universe.
Because I snapped your theory in half.
You're the Thanos of this.
Snapped in half like a number 2 pencil. Anyway. And he has a beard. I used to have a beard. But I shaved it.
Wow. I had it once.
So,
yeah.
But anyway, in regards to, and I'm going to share the screen. So, in regards to Dorothy Fontana, we talked about her. So, yeah, our hats off to her. And again, we really have a lot to thank for her for classic Star Trek. For Star Trek, I mean, Star Trek would not be what it is today if it was not for her. So, again, tremendous loss. Michael O'Harley directed this episode, and interesting enough, he directed a lot. I mean, he produced and directed a lot of television back in that time frame, the 60s, 70s. He did Gunsmoke, Hawaii Five-0, MASH, The A-Team, The Fall Guy, Hunter, Magnum PI, the FBI. I mean, the list goes on. And he actually had won an Emmy in 1979 for outstanding series too. It was called At the White House, and that was in 1979. And his brother Ross, I think we talked about his brother. Dan O'Harley.
Yeah, we were talking about him on this show when we did The People. Remember,
right.
He played the elder. Yeah,
he did a lot of
the
stuff.
William Shatner, Kim Darby TV movie.
Yes.
Yeah, but Dan was in tons of stuff. He was in Louise Buñuel's Robinson Crusoe. He's nominated for an Academy Award for that. But we remember him from things like Halloween 3.
Oh man, no, you remember him from stuff like Halloween 3.
But I remember him in things like Halloween 3. I didn't see the Robinson Crusoe movie.
I hate that movie. I really hate that movie.
Oh, I hated Halloween 3 too. I saw that in the theater also.
I saw that in the theater. I saw that in the theater that was right below where you lived. It was at the Budco.
Yeah, sure.
80. That movie came
out.
I lived
upstairs at the Budco. Yeah.
That movie celebrated its 40th anniversary. Oh, hurt me. Such a bad film. Yeah. Anyway,
who celebrated it? Yeah, I think I heard that they might want to remake that.
Oh no, to say it's not so.
Like they're going to save it. We'll do it good. We'll do it better this time.
They'll revisit it.
Yeah, not with Dan O'Harley though.
No.
He was also in Twin Peaks. He had a part in Twin Peaks.
Yeah, I saw that. And Warren's a huge Twin Peaks fan. So, yeah. Yes, Dennis. Season of the Witch. Oh,
Yeah.
Awful movie.
How
Awful.
many days till Halloween?
Yeah. What was it? Silver Shamrock? Was that?
Silver Shamrock.
Oh,
Yeah.
that song. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah,
Yeah.
that was his brother. That was his brother. Yeah, and he actually passed at a young age too. He was only like 67 years old. He died when he passed. He died in Dublin, Ireland.
Okay. Wasn't he born there or thereabouts?
I think he was. I
They
know he
were
was
Irish. Yeah.
definitely Irish descent. Yeah, yeah.
I thought they were born there. Yeah.
They might have been, but yeah. And then in regards to the music, now to your point, I mean, I have Alexander Courage for the music, but there was also, like I mentioned earlier, Gerald Fried. There was a
Yeah.
lot going on with this episode, right, Ross?
Yeah. And I have, as I said, having watched both episodes, this and Assignment Earth today, I might be messing it up, mixing it up in my head, because I know one of them, the Apollo from Adonias was in one of them. It might have been Assignment Earth. They used that fanfare that Apollo has. But yeah,
Yes.
I mean, there was a lot of. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, because
Was that this one, or was
when
it
Apollo grows in
Yeah.
an
So
episode,
was it this one, or was it the other one, Assignment Earth?
it was the other one.
The Assignment Earth, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of Star Trek stock music in this one, but Alexander Courage is one of the Star Trek luminaries, and they did use a fair amount of his music in this, and he's best known for having written the theme, of course, which we've talked in the past about how Roddenberry and he had to split the. Roddenberry got some of the residuals from that because he put the lyrics to the theme, even though there are no sung lyrics on the show. It's like, oh, thanks, Gene. Yeah, so I think that led kind of to a fallout. I think Courage left at a point. He was supposed to be the principal, house composer of the series, and he did do a number of episodes, but then he left, and I think he came back and did one or two more.
He did.
But he he was born in Philadelphia, which I always like to mention. He was born in 1919 in Philadelphia. Started out as an orchestrator for the movies. Worked on musicals like Showboat and The Bandwagon, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. Worked with Andre Previn a lot. He scored or did orchestrations for My Fair Lady, for Inside Daisy Clover with what's her name? She was in Brainstorm. Was a lot. Not Natalie.
Now Natalie Wood.
Natalie Wood, thank you. Inside Daisy Clover. He worked with Adolf Deutsch, with Funny Face, and with Some Like It Hot. John Williams, he worked with him a lot. With Fiddler on the Roof, which was an Oscar-winning score, but he helped orchestrate that. He worked on the Poseidon Adventure. He worked on Superman. He worked on Jurassic Park. Yeah, he worked a lot with John Williams, and he became kind of a principal arranger for the Boston Pops. Also, the way that boy, the names aren't coming to me tonight. The way that Leroy Anderson was kind of the Boston Pops arranger when Arthur Fiedler was in charge. He worked with Jerry Goldsmith. He did a lot of work with him. He did worked with him on the Waltons TV series. And in fact, I guess Jerry Goldsmith was the first one that they were looking for Star Trek, but he couldn't do it. So they got Alexander Courage. I don't know if it was on Goldsmith's recommendation or if it just was a coincidence that he and Goldsmith happened to work so closely together later, because he became Goldsmith's principal orchestrator, especially later in Goldsmith's career. But early on, they worked on the Waltons. They worked on they worked on he came back and worked on Star Trek the Motion Picture,
right,
with Goldsmith. I remember, in fact, he had written a few cues for that. So Fred Steiner basically stepped in kind of and filled his role on the original series, where you always see music by Fred Steiner. Fred Steiner, he was doing basically what Alexander Courage probably would have done had he not got a little, irked and left to do other things. So yeah, he's done a lot of stuff. He's dead now. He died in 2008. Oh, and I love the fact that for the Star Trek theme, that he was the one that provided the whoosh sounds over the music at the beginning. They couldn't get the sound he wanted, so you go whoosh. Do it again, Alexander. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I've got on pretty much on Alexander Courage. I saw that he worked on Dr. Dolittle with Leslie Bracus too. The old one with Rex Harrison from the 60s.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So,
yeah. So he was a busy artist then.
He's a busy artist. It's not saying he composed all of those things. Oh, he did. He did do some original film scores, and in fact, one of the scores he did was for Superman 4. John Williams didn't write the music. He took some of the themes that Williams wrote, but he wrote his own original score for the 20-piece band or whatever they used on that low budget Superman movie.
So you're talking about the Quest for Peace, the Superman
Quest for
back in
Peace.
87.
Yeah.
Wow.
The quest for a 20-piece orchestra.
When you think about it too, how sad is that when you had such a grand film as Superman, the first one, and then what it ended up with in the fourth one. It
was like the Planet of the Apes syndrome.
Yeah.
Let's keep slashing the budget for every sequel.
Yeah. It just progressively, got worse and worse.
That's a shame. They would never do that today. They would have, with a movie that was that successful, they would have coddled it.
Right.
Imagine like a Disney movie. Every last bit of it would have been, totally overanalyzed and we got to polish it up and so that they're all exactly the same.
Well, we talked about that because the first one came out in 68, and I think the second one was the second one in the 70s. I don't even remember.
What are we talking about?
For Planet of the Apes.
Oh, Planet of the Apes. I don't know. Yeah, they were like every year after that. Yeah,
maybe the second one was like in 69, but then it was progressively, it went down, and then you had the series that was in 73, 74. But I remember. Do you remember the Mego figures that they had out? That was the big.
Oh, thing. I have those.
Yeah, it was Star Trek, because Star Trek came out I think in 74 with the Mego figures, and then it was Planet of the Apes. Yeah. It was they were like side by side, and it was that was a huge thing. It was like you watched either that show or Trek. And the irony is that I think the Apes series was like 13 episodes if I remember correctly. But the Hague is saying Beneath was 1970. Yeah.
I remember that. The first one was made such an impact, and it got that special Oscar for the makeup and everything.
Right, John Chambers.
Right, but then it's like, now I'm really going to give you half the money for the next one. Yeah,
and he went on to he was actually doing Lost in Space, because what he did was he did there was an episode. It was called it was I can't think of the title. It was a third season episode, and what happens is essentially Smith goes off on his thing where he gets taken over by like this machine, and he wants to be a master of the universe. But what he does is he has all these androids, cyborgs created, and then he has them as with his face that they all look like. And then what happens is Will falls into the machine, and Billy Mummy is wearing this mask that looks just like Smith, and John Chambers did the makeup for it, and it was incredible. And for the longest time, Jonathan Harris had kept one of those masks, but what happened was, over so many years, it literally disintegrated because of what it was made of.
Right.
But but it's just a lot of memories there of all that stuff.
You're talking about the special. You're reminding me about the special effects and the makeup. Talking about Chambers, and my thoughts leap to the special effects and how they were never intended for DVD and what have you. And watching them on home, in digital on your home television without restoration, and watching the episode today, you could really see the application. Spock's ears, you could see the glue sticking out and stuff.
Yeah,
because you wouldn't see it with that kind of resolution back.
It's high def. That's the whole thing. When I had Brian Johnson, special effects wizard, Academy Award winner from Space 19, for Empire Strikes Back and for Alien. He was on, and obviously Space 1999. When he was on the show, he was talking about Space 1999, and he was almost like, and one of the things is he was saying is he said, it's, you guys are cheating with the with the Blu-rays and the high definition, because when they filmed all of those things, it wasn't intended for that, with the resolution being the clarity it is. So now you can see the strings, you can see how everything is supported. I mean, it's still cool to see and everything. And to me, a lot of those effects, even with high def, hold up to this day. Some of them not so good, but some of them really do. But to your point, I mean, in regards to, you could see the soundboards on some, you can hear this, you could see some of the wood, the way it's painted on the set and everything with these shows. It happened with, again, 1999, you could see that it's like big strokes of paint. It looks sloppy because the clarity is just so clear of, with that.
Yeah. But some of that stuff has a certain charm to it, even if you can see the, I still like the old Flash Gordon serials, even though the effects are so of their time. But damn, now that I forgot what I was going to say about the effects of the makeup.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Just about the resolution and how you couldn't see those things. Oh, the one thing that really bothers me, this wasn't even really important to remember, but we need one further digression here. Every time I watch Raiders of the Lost Ark, when he falls into the Well of the Souls with the Cobra, you used to be able to see the eyes of the Cobra. You used to be able to see the Cobra reflected, on the glass that they had between Harrison Ford and the snake.
Right.
And they went and digitally scrubbed that out now, so you don't see it whenever you watch it. Someone who's watching for the Cobra.
Yeah, that was the big thing. That was what, in case it spit, that was the protection that he had from that.
But you could even make it out when it was on the big screen, I remember. But certainly I can make it out at home. But no, they scrubbed it out digitally now. They ruined my childhood. They're playing with my memories, reprogramming me.
I do enjoy the enhanced effects, though. I'm just glad. What I'm grateful for is that the original series effects were not taken away for Classic Trek. I mean, if I want to go back and watch them, I can. But with some of these effects, they did a really, really nice job, and especially in this episode, because when they're doing the time, and we didn't even really close out with this, but as they returned Captain Christopher and they returned the guard back, and then what happens is they get back to their own time. And while this whole thing is going on with the, trying to do the light speed breakaway factor, and they're trying to do the slingshot effect, essentially what they're doing is they're showing the Enterprise, and it's just like it's shaking. But they were on a limited budget. It was 1967, and they couldn't do the effects that what they went back and did, which was the CGI, where they actually had the Enterprise going towards the sun and then breaking away from it, and which adds so much more to it. But again, for 1967,
right?
Just the Enterprise just kind of like wobbling. I mean, the actors are selling the moment, but
right. It was something they would parody on Saturday Night Live or something. But the real special effect was the story and the script, So you kind of just, that was just incidental, the effects.
Martin is saying Ross did the slingshot around the sun and reshot the Raiders film.
I'm gonna put the Cobra eyes back in.
That's such a great movie.
Here come the Terminators again.
They're coming. They're here. But no, it's all good stuff. But we were talking about the makeup and chambers and everything. Yeah, it's really good. Yeah. So essentially, though, fun episode. Again, it has a little bit of everything in it, and just a lot of the music. I thought the music was really appropriate, and especially I love can't say enough about the opening. It really brings you into this, and I just thought it was just it was just a really good story. It was for the first time with the Enterprise actually going back to Earth. I think it was very well done, and 56-year-old episode, first season of Star Trek, unbelievable. How the hell is Star Trek going to be 60 years old, Ross, in 4 years? Because you know what that means, don't you?
We have to do a slingshot. What?
No, it means we're going to be 60.
Oh, okay. I see. Now I get it.
I get it.
We're both right.
Now
Yeah.
you're getting nasty.
Yeah. Of course, they never really had to go back to Earth because he kept visiting enough parallel Earths every other week. Like, here's a planet where we have Nazis. Here's a planet where we have Vic Tayback.
Vic Tayback.
In pinstripes. Pinstripe gangster.
One of the few times classic Star Trek did comedy, a piece of the action.
Yeah. And wasn't the one with isn't Mary? Wasn't that like Depression era? Or it was the Earth, obviously, but when they went and they had the plague resistant children.
Yeah, that was Mary, but that was an Earth though. It was
no, but it was another parallel Earth.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like it's if you don't go back and look at these things, it's like it seems like they're on Earth every week. But that's the great thing about the series, though, because they were always commentary on Earth, even if they're not on Earth.
Right.
And in the case of the Adonias, he supposedly one of the theories is that he left Earth. You know what I mean? He was one of the old gods that went and was driven out.
Yeah, that was a sad episode. Yeah, Apollo was a tragic character.
Yeah.
Claudia is saying when the last Planet of the Apes movie came out, the movie theater in
the Apathon.
Yeah, had an all 5 movie marathon, one price, and all had hot dogs, popcorn, and soda you could eat. I don't know how much Dad paid. It was a long day. Wow.
Yeah. They ran that at the State Theater in Easton too, the Apathon. But to show you how much my mom loved me, she and my stepfather and my aunt and uncle went to see it at the Starlight Drive-In, and she thought I'd like it, so she took me to see it at the State Theater. So she saw the Apathon twice.
You know what that gets, Ross? That gets a spot.
A special place in heaven for that one.
Henry's turning the big 6-0 along with Trek also. Welcome to our club, Henry. We'll see you there. And Martin is saying, don't forget Doctor Who's 16 years time. Yeah, we're going to be getting to that, Martin. Thank you for the lead into that. And Christian is saying Chambers also did The Island of Dr. Moreau, the one with Burt Lancaster. Yeah, we talked about that movie. That was really good.
Yep.
Payback moved to Arizona to open a diner.
Yeah. I'm glad he explained it's an Alice reference.
Jack saying Mary was in Mayberry. Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah,
Phil saying I want Kirk and company to go back to Woodstock and have Spock jam with Hendrix. He did, Phil. He did. It was an episode called The Way to Eden. We reached, Phil. Oh boy. Anyway, I'm getting punchy.
Yeah.
Ross, we've only been going for that's right. We started it.
We started early. We better go. The slingshot effect is so dangerous that they had to keep repeating it. Then it's like, let's do it again. Especially when they went back in Assignment Earth. Oh yeah, we're on a research expedition now. Let's do it again a couple of times. Here's Walter Cronkite.
Yeah. Actually, before we go to that, Jeffrey was saying, "Gonna crack my knuckles and jump for Roy." I mean, Joy. That was actually a lyric in that song from that movie.
Oh, okay.
So, anyway, yeah. So, any last minute thoughts on tomorrow's yesterday? Please post them out, and we're going to circle back. But before we continue onward, we're doing a new segment on the show, which is called "That's the Way It Was." And this is a nod to legendary news reporter Walter Cronkite, because what he used to do is when he would sign off his show, he would say, "That's the way it is," and then he would list the date. So with that said, that's the way it was, January 26, 1967, as that was the premiere date of when this episode was first shown. And interesting enough, looking back on factoids from that date, interesting. Chicago had the worst snowfall on record. It started on the 26th and went into the 27th of January. They actually got 23 inches of snow, which is a lot of snow, and that was in Chicago back on that day. And then also, if you're a Monkees fan out there and you are a believer, the Monkees was a #1 hit in the U.S. at that time, as well as the U.K. So definitely wanted to acknowledge the Monkees. And actually, I have the song in my head because, as we know, we were doing, folks know out there, for Country Gate, we were doing a mystery science fiction 3000 type of scenario, as well as doing discussion of the cult classic, which everybody remembers, Plan 9 from Outer Space. And with that, Bill had written one of the songs, and one of the songs was actually based on that song. So it's kind of like it was like running through my head. So anyway, a nod to the Monkees. And also, Ross brought this up a little while ago, a little earlier, and it was the very next day, and it was something that I felt really needed to be mentioned, and it was more of an historic remembrance in regards to the accident that had taken place the very next day after this episode had premiered. Apollo 1 was doing a launch rehearsal, and then there was electrical fire, and very sadly, there were 3 astronauts that had been lost as a result of that. But we remember them and thank them for the service, and they had helped forge, the program to go forward. It would be almost a delay in regards to, everything being reevaluated and a safety committee being done for that. So, but it was a terrible tragedy, as Sue's pointing out. But definitely wanted to give them a nod, even though it was the following day. Regards to shout outs, we're going to head into the shout out portion of the show. Want to give a shout out to Mike and Mary Beth. Mary Beth was out there earlier, and Mike and Mary Beth discussed science fiction, TV, and movies of the 80s, 90s, and beyond. And they will be on this Wednesday, November 16th at 7 p.m. I have Eastern Daylight Time. It's actually Eastern Standard Time because Daylight Savings Time is over. And they will be discussing the 1990 film Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Definitely a good film to talk about. Fun film. So definitely check it out. Mary Beth is even commenting right now too. She's saying, yep, Total Recall with Arnold. Did it really happen, or was it all in his head? That's a question. That's a good question to ask. So definitely a fun movie. Has a little bit of everything in it. Definitely check that out. So Mike and Mary Beth on Sci-Fi Distilled, and that will be this Wednesday, November 16th, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also want to give a shout out to the Country Gate Players. Theater is back in Belvedere, New Jersey, folks, and it will be taking place Saturday, December 10th and 17th at 8 p.m. and also Sunday, December 11th and 18th at 2 p.m. for the Sunday matinee. And as everybody knows, with COVID and everything, it's really put a hit on theater. And this is going to be the production that's going to be taking place. And again, Christmas at Country Gate, songs and stories of the season from your favorite performers. So it's going to definitely be nice, and it'll definitely get you into the holiday cheer. For information about the tickets and the more information about the show, you can go to www.countrygate.org. And also for information in regards to the site, Bill also posts information on his website. You can go to www.billscarrato.com. And again, if you are in the Belvedere area, definitely check it out. And we hope to see you there and to support the theater. Next, I want to give a shout out to Captain Phil's Planet. Captain Phil is out there as well, as Bill was. And Captain Phil broadcasts on WUSB 90.1 FM, Stony Brook, New York. And the captain's schedule is alternating Thursdays from 3 to 5 p.m. and Friday nights from 9 to 11:30 p.m. And it looks like Phil is also putting some information out there. He says he's got Candace Knight of the Blackmore's Night this Thursday and part 2 of the Evership interview coming on Thursday at WUSB 90.1 FM. I will be preempted this coming Friday, but you can stream and find information at www.the Thanks for posting that out there too. Thanks, Bill. Much appreciated. Glad you enjoyed it. I also want to give a shout out to Studio One Thrift, to friends Martha and also Snow. They are the owners of Studio One Thrift, and they showcase their lineup for all seasons, all year long. If you go to their website, which is www.studio1thrift.com, they have quality, stylish, affordable clothing for men and women. They actually started this online business about maybe 5 months ago, and the material is very, very very good, and definitely check out their website. They can ship actually anywhere. So again, take a look at their website, and if you have any questions, visit them, and you can send information to them via the website. And I want to give a quick shout out to the Star Trek Original Series set tour. As we know, we're talking about Star Trek tonight, folks. And the captain, the one and only William Shatner, is going to be up in Ticonderoga this weekend. He's going to be there from Friday to Sunday, which is the November 18th to the 20th. This is William Shatner returning. He's usually there in July. Well, he's been there this July, and again, it's November. You can go to the website for any information in regards to tickets and availability for the different tiers that they have. The website is www.startrektour.com. So definitely check it out. It would be an opportunity not only to meet William Shatner, but if you've never been to the original series sets, it's something you definitely want to see. I mean, they are incredible. So again, definitely check it out. And Ross, if you can let everybody know what you've got going on.
All right. Well, these are the two shows I've got on WWFM, the Classical Network. Picture Perfect's the movie music show, and that airs every Saturday night at 6 o'clock. You're in luck. You missed that one this week, but we'll do something again next week, Saturday at 6 at wwfm.org. Tonight on The Lost Chord, Sunday night at 10, I am focusing on Estonian music from Estonia. And I'll have music by Heino Eller, his violin concerto, by Lepo Sumeri, his Symphony No. 4, subtitled Serena Borealis, and a selection from Arthur Kopp's oratorio, Job. So that's Talon's Got Talent is the name of the show tonight on The Lost Chord. And again, you can enjoy that at wwfm.org. If you're in the Easton area, it's at 93.1. If you're in Penargil, it's 89.5. If you're in the Trent and Princeton area, it's 89.1. We've got frequencies all over the place. You can check it at wwfm.org or just stream it right there on the website. If you can't listen at the times indicated, you can listen to the webcast. That'll be up in a couple of days also. So there you go. I can't remember. Is next week the weekend before Thanksgiving then?
Yes.
Oh, it is. Okay. So next weekend's my Thanksgiving show for Picture Perfect.
Okay.
So we'll have some music for... well, I'll go over it next Friday. It's fine. We'll be back on Friday. I won't take up any more time tonight, but I hope you will enjoy those. And I do tease them on my Facebook page. So you can, on the days of the show, you can read more about what's coming up at Classic Ross Amico.
Cool. Thanks, Ross.
Thanks, Roy.
Alrighty, folks. And just as a reminder, we are now broadcasting on YouTube and Twitter as well. So if you haven't already, please just go to either Facebook if you haven't already, or YouTube and Twitter, and just follow us or subscribe to us. And it is free to subscribe to the show, I will say. So we hope to see you out there, and we appreciate the support. And if nothing else, please share and just let everybody know about it. We really appreciate it. And finally, just to let everybody know, we are going to continue with Time Travel Month for the month of November. And by popular demand, we've gotten a lot of requests about this, and it's, we've been holding off, and it seemed the best thing to do. And we have not covered Doctor Who on the show yet. And we will be broadcasting and talking about Doctor Who this coming Friday, November 18th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we are going to be doing the 4-part story arc, which is called The City of Death. And it's from 1979. Interesting enough, I guess the guests in those episodes were Catherine Schell, as well as Julian Glover. So looking forward to talking about this. I actually watched the episodes about 2 days ago just to get caught up on them because it's been a long time. But we're dealing with the Tom Baker series. This was the 17th season of Doctor Who, believe it or not. So, and as Martin brought up, Doctor Who is going to be celebrating its 60th anniversary next year. So we definitely are going to be covering it. We have not gotten into Doctor Who yet. So it is definitely that time, and we're looking very much forward to it. So we will be back on Friday to discuss that. So thank you for that. And yeah, the only other thing we didn't talk about tonight was in regards to Starlog magazine. Forgot to give the nod to Starlog issue number 1, which of course is, you know, Star Trek with William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy on the cover. So anyway, there we go. But
always leave them wanting more, Roy.
What's that, Ross?
Always leave them wanting more. Always leave them wanting more.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
There you go, Ross.
There
you wanted
go.
more. You wanted more. You just got it.
No, you leave them wanting more. You don't give them more. See, now they all have a bellyache. You gave them too much.
Anyway, well, I want to thank everybody first before I go on. Any last words, Ross?
No, that was it.
The bellyache. That sounds like a quote from a Star Trek episode. Speaking of Star Trek, and actually, I think it was the Man Trap. Kirk says, I'm starting to get a bellyache right now. And he says he's got a bellyache and it's a beauty right now. It was from the Man Trap. So,
there anyway. You go.
See, we ended on a quote, Ross. Anyway, Randy's asking when we're going to be covering the Doberman gang. There we go.
We should have him on as a guest for that one.
Yeah, we'll have to do that. But thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. We hope you enjoyed the show, and wishing you a safe week ahead. We're coming into the middle of the month already, and Thanksgiving is not too far away. So we got some interesting stuff planned coming up in the upcoming weeks, and we'll be announcing that probably shortly. So just stay tuned. Live long and prosper. Stay safe, and we will see you on Friday. Take care.
Have a good week.
Bye-bye.